Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Guys. And yes, that is Saturday's song. I pushed the wrong button. Hope everybody's having a great night. We've got a great show lined up for you tonight. Let's see. First off, I need to thank Guyz Radio at guyzradio.com for allowing us to come on, and of course, Rainbow Radio. Then we're also going to be on WDJY in Atlanta. Thank you, WDJY, and WRFN, Radio Free Nashville. Thank all of y'all for your support and allowing us on. And let's see who we got hiding backstage here. The one and only Amanda. How are you?
Good. How are you? I thought we got new music.
I'm just making this up as I go, you know. I have been off all day. I stayed up too late last night is what it was. So
yes, I did the same thing.
Yeah, all my friends are telling me the same thing. Their butt's dragging today. So
yes. Yeah.
Well,
I finally passed out.
Yeah, well, I couldn't. I guess I got to be like a news junkie there at the end. And I was flipping between channels and YouTube, and yeah, it was too much.
Yes.
And I said on my radio show that I'm glad it's over. We got it over in 24 hours, and I am most certainly glad that the commercials are gone. Oh yes. My! Now, please get rid of the pharmaceutical commercials. I'm afraid that my liver is going to pop out my eye. Please stop them.
I'm hoping my Facebook feed clears up. Like, okay, everybody, it's over. It's done. Let's move on.
Yeah. So, well, we had two guests scheduled tonight, and our first guest is not here, but our second guest is here. So we're going to bring Wayne out. Wayne is a retired ATF agent, and he has written several books, and he's got a new one coming out that he wants to tell us about. Wayne, how are you?
Hey, nice to see you after a couple of years.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
Well, we're growing, and we're slowly making progress. So we're getting there. One of these days we'll make it big time. So, but not like you. You got 3 books. Tell us about them. Wow.
Thanks for having me back. A lot of you people probably read already Burn, Boston, Burn. That was the first one. It was fun because it was 3 years of my life from 82 to 85. And then it was 3 years. Well, now it's been 5 years of my life again. I have done about 100 speaking events on Burn, Boston, Burn, and my second book, Bang, Boom, Burn. And now I'm lining up new ones for the new one that you can see right above my head, Flames of Secrecy. But Burn, Boston, Burn quickly, just not to beat a dead horse. 9 guys, including 3 cops, 3 firefighters, burned 264 buildings in and around Boston from 1982 to 1984. And I was an ATF agent in Boston, working with Boston Fire, Police, and state fire marshals. And it took us a couple of years to put the case together. These guys weren't easy to catch, but we had a couple good breaks. And I'm glad to say that I have signed a contract for a motion picture for Burn, Boston, Burn. My screenwriter just completed his deal to get paid to write the screenplay. So I know that they're serious about doing it. It still could be a couple more years down the road. So I'm going to New Mexico coming in February to speak to New Mexico fire investigators. This year I went to Detroit, spoke there for Detroit. But I've been all over, Reno, Nevada, Chicago, Indianapolis, North and South Carolina, Georgia. I came to Georgia and bounced around quite a bit. And it's been fun.
That's amazing. I can't wait to see that.
It's going to be fun. I mentioned to Glenn earlier that I'm going to be an executive producer while the show is being taped. And I'm excited about being there every day and taking part. It'll be fun.
Are they going to film it there in Boston?
Some of it definitely has to get filmed here. I mean, one night in particular, I love to tease people when I'm speaking. One night they went outside, 40 miles outside of Boston, to screw with the investigators. Okay. And in an old city outside of Boston, northwest of Boston, They set 4 multiple alarm fires in one night, and they were raging fires. And somebody almost died that night, and it wasn't by fire. So I don't tell you the rest of it.
Oh, wow.
So it was a heck of a case, and a lot of fun. A lot of heartaches at the time, but eventually it worked out very well. And one of the arsonists is a friendly professional. I have a relationship with him today, as far as we keep in touch. If I have any questions that I didn't get answered, he will still answer them. His birthday was last week, 2 days ago. I forgot to give him a call, but I did take him out a couple of weeks ago for dinner. Kind of weird relationship, but when I spent 200 to 400 hours with that guy. And
Wow.
when he confessed, and we went to all 264 fire scenes, no matter what it looked like, whether it was a vacant lot, a burned out hulk of a building, or if it was, rehabbed. And we recorded, what did you do? Who were you with? How did you do it? That type of thing. And I spent so many hours and then prepped him for 2 trials. And so I had a lot of time with this guy. And when he went to prison for 10 years, he kept in touch. And after the book came out, we kind of got together every few months and talked about things with the book and other people involved. So it's a lot of fun.
That's so interesting.
So can I keep going on?
Oh, keep going on, by all means. I'm not stopping you. I'm enjoying this. You know me.
Yeah.
I don't know which way to lean. The book over this shoulder here. Bang, boom, burn. Very different from the first one, because the first one is one long story. It's 21 short stories. Before I did some fire cases, I did some gun cases, and things kind of fell into my lap sometimes, just like the largest arson case that we had. I also had the largest seizure of M16s in New England. 46 of them were found in a house about 12 miles from where I'm living right now. And they were stolen from an armory 4 years earlier, and half of them, another 46, went to Northern Ireland along with the M60s. And but in this house in a little suburb, there were 46 M16s, 17 other stolen guns, and $1 million worth of stolen property.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that's the first story in there. And there's I did a little undercover thing. It's funny, I was watching a TV show last night, and they were talking earlier. They were talking about the Latin Kings, the Hispanic gang. Well, we had a group of Latin Kings in the 1980s, and I was a member of the Latin Kings. I don't look very Hispanic, but they weren't the same then. Back then, you could take them by the shirt collar probably and just slap them before they became serious. And I didn't even see any crimes that they were committing while I was part of the group. And I still have my colors, the Puerto Rican flag and stuff on the Latin Kings. And there was one case where I almost didn't think I was going to come home from a countryside up in Maine. I had no idea where I was. There was just an informant and myself and the bad guys. And all of a sudden they turned on me and weren't too happy with my presence. I was trying to buy some M16s from them. And one of them had already sold guns to an undercover agent in Providence. So I know for sure that they had guns. And all of a sudden they started, "What are you doing here? I don't know what the hell he brought you up here for," and just got right into my face. "You're either a Fed or a cop or something." And, I argued my way out of there. And, but I had no idea where I was, because we've been driving around for hours in rural Maine, and it was now nightfall. It was November, and it was pitch black. And when I got back to the hotel, somehow I have this senseless direction. You know, most people have a good sense of direction. Well, I have senseless direction. I can get you somewhere. When I got back to the hotel, I just let go. You know, it was an adrenaline rush that I didn't really want to pursue again. So, but then there were 2 bombing cases in there. One killed a Boston police officer in 1991 that I worked on. And that's a strange case. Convicted 2 guys with zero physical evidence. It was all circumstantial evidence. And it makes for a good read. And I actually point you to other material that you can read for yourself and make up your mind whether that guy is guilty or not. Then second bombing case is really strange. 50-year-old man is dating an American Native woman, and she's 30, so a 20-year difference. And her family hated him, trying to break him up. So he gets a character to go along with him, and they made 6 Christmas packages that they sent to her family members. 4 of them exploded, killing 5 people. So, I mean, I don't even know how you get people to go along with some of these conspiracy things.
Wow.
But it was pretty bad.
And that was before the internet.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
It was 1993. That one was before the internet. And then there's another 14 arson cases in there, all different types. So I had somebody write a review saying, I think it's embarrassing that ATF wrote about these cases that they failed, like some of the arson cases I wrote about.
Why?
Well, we tried to prosecute them, and 2 of them in state court. And one was a dentist who had real estate property. And I'm not an anti-dentite. So, you know, if you remember the episode, Seinfeld. So, you know, he's a white professional male who had never been arrested before. And it was hard to believe that when his net worth went from $3 million down to $1 million, that he was having financial problems. And the jury acquitted this guy. So this person who wrote a review said, you know, you wrote about so many failures, you know, epic failures. And he compared them to Waco and Ruby Bridge and stuff like that. And it's not even close to a comparison. But that one, we had 2 school teachers, husband and wife. When they went to, I mean, we got them on the property as it was burning. And they had no reason to be at that property. They didn't live there. And we even got ignitable liquids on the clothing of the man. And they went to trial when the woman was 7.5 months pregnant, and also a female judge. And every single ruling went in their favor, every ruling. And they were acquitted. And is that really the fault of the agents? I mean, I thought we did a pretty good job, you know? So,
well, I mean, arson's one of the hardest cases to prove because literally your evidence goes up in smoke. And
as they say, you virtually have to have the match in their hand. And how much closer could you be? The dentist was on his property 40 miles away from his home for no good reason. And within 5 minutes of him leaving, it was on fire, and we got gasoline on 3 different floors. And who else could have done it and would have done it in that time period when he was observed on the property 5 minutes before? And then with the school teachers, they're right there. And you just didn't get the match in their hands. So some cases are failures, and we had other ones that did great, you know. So it was fun and different writing that book.
It's also good to write about the failure so people understand what it takes, you know, you like what you went through, how you dealt with that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there was one case that never even got tried. I had 70 government witnesses, 70. The only thing I didn't have was the guy putting the match. We knew it was an arson. Only 1 of 2 people had keys left. We ruled everybody else out. And the owner had motive for this business to burn. And I had so many witnesses. I've never had so much motive, sub-motive. And nobody would prosecute the case because they said, oh, it's going to be a 4-week trial and it's like 50-50 chance. You know, I mean, well, isn't that what the system's all about? You know? And I said to myself, I'm never going to work an arson for profit case. And just for listeners who don't know, arson for profit is when you sell it to the insurance company or you're going to make a profit some other way by burning your building. But, you know, it was a good case. And you want to know something funny? And this is part of the book. 10 years later, this was a seafood business, okay, retail and wholesale. 10 years later, he got caught smuggling swordfish, which is a federal crime from Canada because of mercury contents and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he's being walked down the hallway of the federal building, which was on the same floor, customs and ATF. And he said, oh, that's ATF right there. He says, I wonder if Wayne Miller's in. And the agent knocked on our door and he came in. I was there. He sat down with me and confessed to actually how it happened 10 years earlier, but after the statute of limitations had expired.
Wow.
But nobody would prosecute it. You know, I was rather upset, to say it mildly. So,
jeez.
And all he did was clear his conscience.
Yeah.
I don't know why he did it. I even called him when I wrote the chapter in the book. I wanted his side of the story. I wanted him to contribute. And he said, who's this? I said, Wayne Miller. He said, yeah. I said, remember the fire you had? He said, yeah, that was like 20 years ago. I said, yeah, don't you remember I was the agent who investigated? And he said, you are a bleep and bleep. And he hung up on me. Then I wrote him a letter saying, I don't want to upset the apple cart. I don't know what you have for family now and your kids. I don't know what they know. I said, you can choose to be part of it. And I won't use your real name, which I never did. I never used his full name. I didn't even name the town where it occurred. I just named Cape Cod. If you know what Cape Cod looks like, that finger that stretches out from Massachusetts into the ocean. And I didn't name the business. So I said, I would love for you to be part of this story. It would make it even more interesting. And actually, I called it, he's the most interesting criminal I ever met because he got caught with like 20 tons of marijuana on his fishing boat, went to prison. Then he got caught in a conspiracy to import marijuana. And then he got a seafood captain, another fishing captain got caught up in Canada of his. And when the Canada authorities sent him down to Logan Airport, this guy met him in the parking lot there and accidentally discharged his .357, killing the guy in the parking lot.
Oh my gosh, this guy is just looking for trouble.
Yeah. And he got acquitted as an accidental discharge.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Has he run for political office?
Yep. So some amazing stories. And he never answered the letter, but I put the letter right in the book that I sent to him. So, but that was fun. And now I jump to fiction, folks. So I took my background in fire and explosions, my 37 years of doing fire and explosion investigations, and I have a serial arsonist murderer who only targets women. I'm sorry to say, Amanda. You know, mommy issues come back to haunt you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so every time a woman does something who pings the bell in his mind about his mother, he sets a fire with that woman involved. So you get to see the arsonist as he restrains the woman and then as he sets fire, and you get to watch that in my book because I think I describe it well enough. Today with the internet, I'm not telling any secrets when I describe how to set a fire. It's easy enough.
No. In fact, we had a guest, Richard Little. He's an author out of Atlanta here. And he was a prosecuting attorney in Houston. Was it, Amanda?
I believe so.
And he told us how to start the perfect fire.
Yeah.
And for his book, he's like, I can tell you, it's on the internet.
Yeah.
So, there's about 7 fires that my bad guy sets. And the arson investigator, I didn't have much of an imagination. I named him Mark Miller. So
That's good.
Yep, but there's several reasons behind it, and it's all stuff I can't tell you about in the book. But there's a lot of my real life in there. So now I'm doing book readings in libraries and other places, and I just didn't. My first 2 books, I had a lot of material about true crime. I had real pictures, I had video, stuff like that of actual fires from the case. This one, you don't have that. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I don't want to just read chapter 1. So what I did, I created a PowerPoint. I did read the first 2 paragraphs only. And it's meant to grab you. It's meant to make you say, what's going on? What's going on? What does he know that we don't know? That type of thing. But then I chose actual locations around Boston, in Boston. And I put a Google map of the location. And then I show you the street view where he either set the fire, attempted to set a fire, or where he came across one of his targets. So I have that. And then I wanted audience participation. So what I did, I created true and false, because a lot of this comes from my real background. And I'll tell you a little aspect. In my real life, my biological father left when I was 6 months old. I met him again when I was 44 years old. That is true. Something like that happens in the book. And he told me something that changed a big aspect of my real life. And I used something like that in the book. Okay. So what I did with the people in the audience, I put true or false. I put 2 sentences down I picked them out, and I said, did this really happen? Or is this something made up? Is this really part of my life, or is it made up? And it really generates back and forth with the crowd. It's kind of fun, and it's not boring in my mind. So
yeah, that's very interesting to get people thinking like that.
Yep, there's a couple of good twists in there. And you get profiling in there. You get to see the investigators, but I didn't do it in such a way that the investigations would be boring to a layperson who doesn't know anything about fires. There's just a few things in there to teach you a little bit as a layperson, like even a potato chip fire. Yeah, I don't know if you know about potato chip fires, but potato chips make a great fuel.
Yes, they do.
They do. And one of the fires was set in that manner. And then some other little aspects from the investigators, but then you get profiling. So you get into the head of not only the bad guy, you get into the head of the investigator. You get into what I call my head, because there's some of the bad guy in my head, in me, and there's a lot of the good guy in me. So it's a real tease.
Oh, I love it.
How hard was it making the transition from true life to true fiction?
Yeah. With Burn, Boston Burn, I had a lot of files. I mean, like a banker box full of files. I had reports from the actual case, like over 200 reports, newspaper, internet. I had so much to go on. And my arsonist buddy, besides interviewing him for $200 to $400, when he went to prison, he wrote he typed 163-page single-space journal. So I had a lot of material. I knew how Greg is the arsonist, the master arsonist in this case. And Greg, I knew how he spoke to his friends. I interviewed every one of them, all 9 guys anyway. But and I spent 200 to 400 of them hours with another of the arsonists, but I never became friendly with him. But I knew how Greg talked. So when he, in his book, when he put dialogue in there, that dialogue is in Burn, Boston, Burn, because I know what Greg told me and then what he typed into that journal. So that's in there. And he allowed me to use his material. So you're going to see that. You're going to see what they said, what they did, and what they thought is all in there. Okay. Then Bang, Boom, Burn. Yes, I had some files, but I didn't have a lot of other ones. They were filed right here. So when you have true stories to go with, there's a lot of material, such as that bombing case where there's no physical evidence. I read the court transcripts, and that really helped a lot to write that chapter. But boy, your imagination is just free when you're writing fiction. You know, yes, you took your background and you took some of your life experiences, and then you put them into fiction. And you can write anything you want as long as you're not saying that monkeys came out of the fire hose or something like that, you know.
People might believe it.
Yeah, they might. But it was so much fun. And I started in earnest in November. And then I started a class about February 1st with a woman who's also my editor, but she has a class with half a dozen students writing books of all different types. And she promised that we would all have our books done by middle of August. And we did virtually. It was a little more editing that had to be done, but we all got them done. And I tell you, I concentrated over the winter, spring, into the beginning of summer, and we banged this thing out. And it really was a lot of fun. And I just think that it is a crime thriller. I've got, some good editorial reviews. Even my screenwriter from the first one checked it out, and he says it's easily adaptable for a movie. So maybe my second movie.
Definitely. That would make a great movie.
Yep.
Well, they said the superhero genre is dying, so maybe that's what's coming next.
Yeah, the superhero thing's been really done over and over and over.
Yeah, we beat that dead horse. So.
But it made a lot of money, though.
Made a lot of money, and some of them were pretty fun. So yeah.
But,
yeah. Disney knew what they were doing. Take my money, please.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the next Star Wars movie.
Yeah, it's probably in the can already. Yeah.
I've been watching this since I was like 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Bay should be your director because he loves to blow things up. I mean, it's literally every movie they just blow shit up. He made a movie about guys who robbed a bank, hijack an ambulance in their getaway, and there's more explosions and things in that than there were in Transformers.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's who you should get as your director, and it'll be he's sold plenty of movies, or I don't know what you call it, but when they go to the box office, they made lots of money for him. He likes to blow stuff up, and he's good at it. So
yeah.
I agree, Cheyenne. It's not dying. They're going to keep those going.
Oh yeah. As comic book nerds, they will, and we'll still go. And now, I don't know if it's this way with all movies, but I've noticed that they're in your house in like 3 months.
I know.
I mean, I remember as a kid waiting for ever.
Yes.
I mean, maybe it wasn't, but it just seemed like it. But dang, yeah. Right now they're like, all right, we got their money. Let's get it in. Let's get it on their TV or in their Christmas stocking. So yeah.
Oh, we have that V2 Pro box. So when a movie comes out, we get it on our box.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't even have to wait for it.
So you get it while it's in the theater?
Yeah.
How the heck do you do that?
It's the V2 Pro box. I'll have to send you a picture of it so you can get one.
I need your secrets. Yeah.
We have every channel. We don't have to have Netflix or anything. It's all on there. Yeah.
So, we have a couple 65-inch TVs, but I might have to go to a 75 or 85-inch to watch some of these movies.
Yes. We're looking at a 100-inch TV right now.
No,
really? We've already measured our bedroom wall for it.
It's crazy. Do they make one?
Yeah, we've got chairs picked out for like the foot of our bed and like a cowhide rug to go at the foot of our bed and a little table so we can just hang out in there and watch movies on it.
Sounds like fun. So
yeah, Chris, the V2 box.
Yeah, I never heard of it myself. Yep.
Yeah. Hopefully no feds will be knocking on your door for that now.
I wouldn't have said anything, but my husband said he heard it on another podcast. So I'm like, okay, I don't mind mentioning it then.
We've only got like 3 listeners, so it's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's my screenwriters, and there's 2 production companies. And what's funny is all of them grew up here in Massachusetts. And they've been out in LA for 15, 17 years, something like that. But they're big companies, and they have connections with all the right people. As a matter of fact, my screenwriter says, "Oh, my wife's best friend is Kevin. My wife's best friend is Kevin Bacon's wife." Like that. And he says, "Oh, I was on the phone with Chris Evan and Chris Pine just last week, and he likes to drop names all the time too." So.
Yeah, but, that's one of the things they do. So,
I mean,
I'm guilty. I do have a few actors in my phone contact log, but I would never call them. They wouldn't answer anyhow.
So you know how crazy some things in life happen. So I got an email from a screenwriter before I met him, and he said, "I grew up in the Boston area, but I've been living out here for years." He went to a wedding in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was an ATF agent. And the agent knew he was from Boston and just said, "Hey, you know anything about this story?" And he said, "No." So he went and bought the book. He loved it right away. He contacted me. He came out to see family here. We had lunch together. He said, "Right on my phone, see, I have 6 producers right here, and I'm heading back tomorrow. And I'm going to contact each one of these, and I can almost guarantee I'm going to get somebody interested." So, of course, one of the companies where the guy grew up just north of Boston, he jumped at it right away, and then he got another production company involved. So we're moving along.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
You'll have to keep us updated on that.
Yeah, we can say we knew you win back in the day.
I'm hoping so. It'll be fun. It'll be my 3rd or 4th career. So
there you go. Do you get to pick who plays you?
People ask that, and I got to think of somebody in the 30-year-old range or somebody who can look 30 still. And while I'm watching shows, I said, "Ooh, he could be a good guy. I got to write his name down."
Well, you said he knows Chris Pine, right?
Yeah, and they just did a job with Ben Affleck, and Chris Pine would still be good, but the other production people are Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, and we know the Wahlbergs. I tried to get the Wahlbergs interested in 2019, right after the book came out, they have a nice restaurant south of Boston, besides the Wahlburger hamburger joints. And I had 4 books with a letter for each of Donnie, Mark, Paul, who runs the restaurant, Wahlburgers, who did Wahlburgers on TV, and Mama, who was alive still at the time. She passed about 1.5 years ago. But everything had to go through Mama in a sense. So I brought 4 books, and Paulie wasn't at the restaurant, so I asked the manager, could you give them to him? I don't know whatever happened, but I never heard a word. And they're not like that. I mean, they grew up in Dorchester, right in the heart of Boston, where 26 of those 264 fires occurred. And people who grew up during that time period, the sirens were going every night. Mm-hmm. And, so they knew about it for sure. So, but I'm surprised I never got contacted.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually a lot of people think about the New England area being, and don't take this wrong way, snobby or stuffy or whatever. But, and I mean, I did too, until I went up there and actually met the people and got to intermingle, and they're just as nice as people anywhere else in the world. So
sometimes nicer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you run into all types for sure.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's jerks everywhere in the world, so you're never going to stop that. So
absolutely. So what do we got?
I'm looking at. Oh no, we still got plenty of time. I may keep you over. You're telling such good tales. The fires that were for Burn Boston Burn, they started in protest, didn't they?
Yep, because people always ask, of course, about what's the motivation behind these guys. So we had a tax cutting measure called Proposition 2.5. And very simply stated, if you had $100,000 piece of property, it could only be taxed at 2.5% of that, $2,500. So we have so many older cities and towns here. And back in 1980s, a lot of them were run down. Boston had vacant, abandoned buildings all over the place. And the cities and towns said, where are we going to get the money from that now that this goes into effect? So the city of Boston itself laid off 600 firefighters through a rapid retirement, attrition, and layoffs. So over about an 18-month period, they laid off 600 out of 1,700. What's that percentage? Around 38% or something of the department. They closed 22 firehouses. Like, you're familiar with Atlanta, even so you don't live there. But if you close 22 firehouses in the city, you're gutting your service, So these guys, in a twisted version of Robin Hood, said, if we set enough fires, the people are going to scream, and the media will pick it up, and put pressure on the mayor to hire these people back and open up the firehouses. And they were domestic terrorists. They even sent a threat letter saying, if you don't rehire and don't open the fire companies, we will continue setting these fires. And if you decide to start tearing down the abandoned buildings, we will target live structures next. And actually they hit businesses that are closed for the night. One of the biggest ones was a 1,000-foot long warehouse by 300 feet wide. And they set that on fire. And that company went out of business in Massachusetts. They moved to New Jersey after the fire. And, it was a 9-alarm fire here. It's the largest you can go, except they have something they call a special call out. It's not mutual. It's sort of like a mutual aid that other people might have. But it was a huge fire. Plus, remember now, you got 22 fire companies out of service, 600 firefighters gone. So when you start setting fires 2 in a night, 10 in a week, 40 in a month, that type of thing. And your injuries, they had 200 firefighters injured during this spree of nearly 2 years setting the fires. And they continued even after October 2nd, 1982. They had 22 guys seriously injured, broken backs, broken legs, burn injuries, and they continued setting these fires. as a form of protest initially, but then they became adrenaline junkies. Just a ride around the city just to see what's going on turned into, oh, let's set that place on fire. And they would go about during their daytime activities, making lists of places to burn, that type of thing. And it became nightly entertainment for them. And then it became, let's screw with the investigators. We know that they're out on surveillance here in Boston on a Thursday, Friday night, because that's when they were doing a lot of their initial fires. And that's when they started going to the suburbs. And I mean, I told you about the one city. They went north and set 3 in one night in one city, then 3 in another night in another city. And then they would just bounce around and hit other places just because how are we ever going to know? That type of thing. So that's what their motive was.
And one thing I've noticed throughout my career as a firefighter is people assume that arson is a victimless crime because the house is going to be replaced. They're going to bulldoze it over. You're going to get all new stuff from your insurance. You're going to get this flood of money, resources from the neighborhood, blah, 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 blah. Nobody's hurt. But that could be farther from the truth, because not only are we risking our lives to save whatever we can, but then insurance companies don't always operate that way.
Oh, that's correct. I mean, I did, after my 25 years with ATF, I did another almost 18 years on the private side. So I know both sides. And people aren't made whole by their insurance company after fires a lot, and it's a struggle. And if they believe you had anything to do with it or didn't take care of something, you're not going to get the money. So in this case, the abandoned properties, which was their initial targets, abandoned houses mostly, nobody owned them and nobody had insurance. The city of Boston then had to clear the property completely just to make them safe, that type of thing. Still, the city wasn't getting any money at all from these properties. Now, the whole case could never happen. You got a camera at every corner on people's doorbells. You got your cell phone that if we did become a suspect, we could track you. You got your car with tracking on it all the time. You got social media. Do you think these 9 guys could hold it together without bragging someplace? What else?
Funny story on that. Someone did our local Walmart, like the one right around the corner. They poured something on from the store in one of the clothes racks and set it on fire. And Gwinnett Fire couldn't figure out who did it. And I was bored one night and I went through social media and I found the pictures that they posted on, I think it was Twitter or Instagram. And I sent them to the fire marshal. I was like, hey, you might want to start looking into social media, dude.
Yeah.
And that's a true story. I was just bored one night when I was like, okay, I know, like you said, crooks are stupid. I mean, I told a buddy of mine today, a Secret Service agent, we were talking about stupid people, and I said, they kept me employed for 30 some years.
Yeah. Well, that's very true. That's very true. So, we had a couple breaks that helped. And just because these guys were also what sparks, you know what a spark is, a fire buff. Mm-hmm. And we have legitimate organizations. Boston has 2 of the oldest ones, over 100 years old, and they're legitimate organizations, and they collect memorabilia. They trade. They buy even fire trucks for their own. They trade photographs. It's a hobby. It's like a sporting hobby, and some people run to fires. And back in the day of the 80s, we had so many fires that they would actually congregate at Howard Johnson's and other locations and listen on their radios. And these guys were driving their unmarked cruisers, their personal cruisers in a sense. They were black LTDs, black walls with an antenna, and Chevy sedans, Impalas. So they looked just like cruisers. So you go into these neighborhoods in the middle of the night, and 99% of the people are sleeping, and you're in residential areas a lot of times, and they had fireboxes, pull boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these guys started stealing them, and they collected them as memorabilia, but they had a better reason. So let's say you had a fire at A and B Street, and you stole the firebox at B and C Street, and the firehouse is closed at C and D Street. So now you have a delayed call in because nobody can pull the box, and people are sleeping. When they wake up, yes, they can discover and get on the phone, but it's somebody driving by could have pulled it right away. But then you got the firehouse closed, so somebody has to come from much further away to get to that fire. And so these guys knew that the fire would grow exponentially in that time period. So, I mean, the photographs that I have and the video that I have just shows raging inferno one after another. And it's because of the delayed response. So we just got lucky a couple times. We made some good contacts. A WPZ TV cameraman up here, his job, he was a member of the Boston Sparks Association. And he's my biggest supporter after my wife. And he was out and about doing his job. He got paid to be out at night and chase these fires. And one night he's got these guys roaring, laughing, cheering for the fire. Now, they cheered for the home team. The home team is the fire.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the firefighters, they're the visitors. And he got them on camera. And the Boston cop, who was off duty, reached to his shoulder holster and pulled his gun out, waved it in the air. And that was caught for 2 seconds on video. 2 seconds. Now, because they're being idiots in the nighttime, does that make them arsonists? We had spectators all the time, the same spectators, because that's what they do. They run from fire to fire. So does that make them arsonists? No. So you still have to prove it. And we went through a lot. We started interviewing, and we got more information, and we finally they stole a brand new unmarked cruiser from a Ford dealership. And why did they do that? To upgrade their own personal cruiser with some new parts. And afterwards, they dumped it into a body of water in the city of Boston, part of the ocean, it's part of the bay, that type of thing, called a Fort Point Channel. And from our interviews, one of the arsonists told me that they stole the car and dumped it, and we recovered it with the Boston dive teams. And from that, it evolved into a second interview of the main Boston cop. And because he got in trouble for waving his gun, and we interviewed him then, and he had a stolen firebox in his living room. And he got charged with receiving stolen property. Does that make him an arsonist? No. But he got taken off the street and put up in dispatch. And he had a lawyer and said we couldn't talk to him. So we didn't talk to him for over a year. But when we got the stolen car, after we recovered that, then we talked to him again. Now he's going to be charged with that, and he's going to lose his job, and maybe he could go to jail. So he decided to confess. And but then he got a lawyer again the next day in federal court, and we couldn't talk to him again for another 4 or 5 months. And then we wired him up 17 times, and that was fun. We got a lot of good conversation, a lot of great conversation. And so that's how the case started winding down.
And that's a real thing with The Wire. It's not like you just see on the movies and TV where they're taping a mic on you and a recorder.
Well, back in my day, that's what we did. And I have a lot of hair on my chest. And the tape we had was not sensitive to hair. So I even mentioned that in my new book, as part of the new book, that the investigator Mark Miller does a little undercover stint, and he says, "Why can't you use different tape?"
Athletic tape for that, I believe. So
yeah,
Even tape that's meant to not hurt still hurts.
Right. I mean, painter's tape would be good nowadays or something, but the devices now, I mean, you have them in your eyeglasses, you have them in your pens, you have them everywhere. It could be anywhere,
yeah,
So
you never know.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I wore a recorder that was about 4 inches long by 2.5 inches wide by about 3/4 of an inch deep, and you wore that like a girdle and stuff. Oh my God, you wouldn't want to be patted down with that on,
Chris says it seems so much harder to prove arson than swordfish smuggling. You were in a tough position.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. So let me give you a fun story out of the second book. The Mass State Police had an informant who was buying some drugs, and they had quite an operation going. But he came across some information from a guy who was a druggie, and he said, "I just got hired to burn or blow up a laundromat in the city of Lawrence, which was, about 25 miles north of Boston." And we got that information through their informant, but they didn't want to lose their informant. They didn't want to wire him up. But what we did, he actually drove the bad guy to the fire, to the place that he's going to burn. And it's a very large Hispanic community. And we were in a conversion van, one of those pretty ones, it was like 4 of us. I had a Lawrence fire investigator, maybe one of the police officers, a couple agents. It's July. We're sitting on the floor with the windows open because we didn't want anybody to really see us. And we're parked in a parking lot directly across the street from one side of the laundromat. And along comes the car carrying the torch. They pulled in directly next to my driver's door. And the bad guy gets out and he proceeds to take a leak right there next to my door.
Oh my gosh.
We were all holding our breath, but I literally could have reached out and helped him, So he walks across the street afterwards and enters with a key this little side door, and it's a weird building. It was a triangle building. It was an intersection with a triangle, and the opposite side of the building was one level up, street level, because of the elevation. So he's actually entering the basement through that door. We had the gas company on notice because we had heard he might do something to cause a gas explosion. So he went in, and I looked at my watch when he went in, and it was like 7 seconds later or something, 30 seconds later, he came out the door. And I said to the crew around me, I said, he couldn't have done it. He couldn't have done it. And, I'm in charge of the operation. And all I'm thinking is, I'm going to be transferred to Detroit or something if this place blows, Back then, Detroit was the hellhole that we didn't want to go to, But we start talking amongst ourselves, and I'm saying, no, he had no time to do anything. So they left right after he came out the door, and 5 minutes elapsed, and they came and stopped right in the middle of the street. He jumped out and went back in that door again. And I forgot to tell this one other. I told it to the last crew I was talking to. The reason that he came right out, he had forgotten a flashlight, so he couldn't see. Here I am. I'm like worried sick. I'm sweating inside and out, And so he goes in, and the teams on the backside get right up against the building, and they could hear clank metal sounds. And then they tell us on the radio, we smell gas. And I said, okay, Kevin, Kevin was the firefighter. Kevin, take a picture when he comes out that doorway. It'll be nice to have him framed by the doorway coming out. And we had two guys on each side of the doorway. It was one of those little, they stick out a little bit, you know. And as soon as he did come out, Kevin took the picture, and the two guys jumped him, put him down in the street. We went running over. I pulled him up by his handcuffs, and he was about 200-pounder, and I pulled him up by the handcuffs. And at that point, I still hadn't read him his rights or anything. I said, "What were you doing in the building?" He said, "I was going to sleep there." I said, "Okay, let's go see where you're going to sleep." We opened the door, and on the top of 3 steps down into the lower level is a candle lit. "Kevin, take a picture and then I'll blow it out." You could hear the rush of gas. It was a 2-inch main.
Holy cow.
He took the end cap off, and that's what the banging was. He took the end. So I went down 3 steps and hit with a flashlight. I could see where it was right across the basement on the other side. We got the heck out of there, and that gas company we had on call and the fire department, we got them to get out there immediately, because I mean, if that thing blew,
oh yeah,
if there's a water heater or something down there, that type of thing. But the whole idea was to get the arsonist to call back to the guy who hired him, because not only would we arrest the arsonist, but we want the guy who hired him.
Sure.
And he said, "I used to work for Hank." Hank was one of our agents who had retired. He said, "I used to do some work for Hank. I'll only talk to Hank." By the time we got a hold of Hank, it was hours later. And he had to make the phone call, like get the owner of the place on the phone and say, "You should hear about it anytime now. I just did it." And I just wanted confirmation, like, "Okay, I'll be standing by," something like that. Because if somebody says that to you and he has the key, you might think,
too.
So, the owner, we interviewed the owner later, and he said, "Yeah, the guy does some handiwork for me. And I gave him a key, that type of thing. And if he needed a place to sleep, he could sleep in the basement." But we never got to arrest the owner. But, the attempted arson is enough. The guy went away for 4 years, so. But,
Wayne, we've got to take a commercial break. Can you hang around for a few minutes?
Sure thing.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, WDJY and WRFN, we appreciate you for checking us out. Come over to YouTube and find us under the Sportcat shows, and like, follow, share, and subscribe. And Wayne's going to be here, so tune in tomorrow night, or, the following hour, for the next interview with Wayne. We'll see what he's got to say. He's got some great stories.
Hi, Rich Fields here, and come on down. It's time for the Sportcat Show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is the Paranormal Guys. We are in hour 2, or day 2, depending on where you're listening. And Wayne is here from last episode, and he's hanging around and going to tell us some more war stories, and he's going to tell us about his new book. He had a great career with the ATF and in the private industry, and, he's considered a fire expert, so we like it. Tell us some more stories, Wayne.
I tell you, it really was a fun career in a lot of ways. You have your heartache along the way. You have a lot of long hours. The Boston Burn story. When we had the second trial, only 2 guys went to trial out of 9. Everybody else pled guilty. Second trial was January 1985. And that was Ray Norton, a firefighter, a Boston firefighter. He's the only Boston firefighter who was involved in the conspiracy. He never set a fire, but he was definitely part of the conspiracy. He had meetings at his house. They made a device that they used to set these fires at his house, that type of thing. And Ray Norton was a tough individual. Now I forgot where I was going to go with the story.
I do that a lot.
Let me think for a second. Go ahead, say something. I'll think for a second.
Oh no! And so if he was a fireman, he was guilty of something. So
yeah.
And you'd be surprised how many arsonists are firefighters.
I wouldn't be. Your listeners might be.
Yeah, obviously you wouldn't be, but yeah, and it's amazing. They like to start them in, put them out. So
they had a couple famous ones in Boston. One was called a Flaming Arrow. Another one became a deputy chief, but yet people always guessed that he was a arsonist too, but never proved it. And he was in one of my classes. As a matter of fact, yeah, one of my I did a community college class, and he was in one of my classes. That type of thing.
Didn't LA Fire just have one within the past few years that had made it all the way up to like deputy chief, and had been a serial arsonist for years?
Are you talking about John Orr?
Maybe.
John Orr was a captain. They see my book on the front cover says
Bang Boom Burn.
No, that's that one.
Oh, sorry.
It says the largest arson case in the history of the country. Now, and it has a period. Now, this is done by my son-in-law, this book cover. The picture is taken by arsonist Greg Bemis. Okay. So I never instructed my son-in-law to put this subtitle in quotes. It was a quotation from our then U.S. attorney, which was Bill Weld, who became governor here, and he ran a couple times half-assed for president. But he was a pretty good character. And he said that to the press when the arrests were made. Now, we have 264 confirmed buildings. It's not a guess. We have at least 100 dumpsters that they did before they started building fires. So about 360 fires or so. Now, John Orr, he was California's most famous arson investigator and also the most famous arsonist in California. Okay. I know the prosecutor who prosecuted him. I know an agent who worked the case, and I've read the book on how they got him and everything. They think John Orr might have set 1,000 fires by himself over a 25-year span. And they have some sort of records that show his travel to and from locations, and fire occurs along his travels. They do not have confirmation. It's a guess, because John Orr killed a couple people in one of his fires. He was doing these almost like these Michael's type of stores, and he would go and put a small device in the counter, in the cabinets, in the shelves with material, readily ignitable material. And he did that several times. That's how he got caught, because his device didn't burn up one time and it had a fingerprint on a piece of paper, his fingerprint. But he did not confess. So we don't know for sure how many he set. Thomas Sweat, down in the Virginia, Maryland, D.C. area, by himself. That's a good book too, written by a friend of mine. Solving for X, I think is the name of that one. Thomas Sweat set fires for about 20, 25 years. And it was all up in his head. And he would get off on setting the fires. And he confessed to about 350, including sheds, cars, dumpsters, and buildings. And he killed a couple people. So, but his case is in the 90s, and John Orr was in the 90s. My case was 1982 when that quote was made, and I still kept it on the front of my book, but it should have been a quote, quotation marks. Inside the book, it's in quotation marks. You know.
And so, I also had that guy down in was it Accomatic or what's the name of that the strip of Virginia that's not Maryland, it's not Virginia. It's on the beach. That one summer this guy and this gal went on a spree and burnt the whole dang town down.
I don't know it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a real rural area, and it like you were describing, because that was one of the reports I did for a fire class, actually, criminal psychology. And he was a volunteer fireman. He worked as a mechanic, and they weren't getting many fires. There was a lot of empty properties, so he started doing it that way. And then just over a process, I think there might have been some, Amanda, you're going to shoot me, some type of mental impairment. I don't know the correct term. I don't know the politically correct word anymore. Wasn't right in the head. So he fell in love with a woman and basically confessed this to her. And she was like the town prom queen, cheerleader. And if he wanted to be with her, he had to prove it. And so it got to be a back and forth. And he got caught by, I think it was the Virginia State Police, basically about to throw something. They grabbed his hand. They came up from like behind a building, and they caught the girlfriend in a car. She wrote a book too. It was a Washington Post reporter that wrote the book, and then she wrote a book. Well, they suspect she wrote the book. It was a Amazon book that was an anonymous author that told pretty much the same tale that she didn't confess to. For criminal, I picked that one because we had to pick a case that was important, and it was either a serial killer, serial murderer, a killer and a murderer are the same, serial, jewelry thief or something. And I picked arson because, I was there for that class for arson. It was great. Gosh, I wish I could think of the name of the book.
Yeah.
Trying to find the area. I have a map pulled up, but I don't really see.
It's like Appomattox? No,
Appomattox?
It's down there where they do the ponies across the Chesapeake Bay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And a Washington Post author, she got full exclusive to interview, and it was a good book. And he said that he started it because he was a volunteer fireman. They were bored. And from there, it got to be, as he got braver, it got to be a stimulant. And she enjoyed that. And
is it Assateague Island?
That sounds familiar. Yeah. It was like this, the book's called like The Summer Virginia Burned or something like that. And it was a good book. And that's something else a lot of people don't realize. And we had to teach it in our fire academy class. Your first fire as a firefighter, you could get so excited that you could accidentally pee yourself.
Yeah.
It happens. And they're like, don't be embarrassed. Don't tell anybody, but just don't be embarrassed. Just go wash your stuff. But it's a physical response because of the adrenaline. And never happened to me, but we had a rookie in our class that he told us, and well, he was forever known as a nickname, but I'll leave it at that. That's probably politically incorrect now too. So,
well, they sound like a Bonnie and Clyde of fires,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll look it up and email you when we get offline. But yeah, that was one of the cases I did, and they had people staked out all over that little town, and he was a fireman. He knew where they were.
Yeah, right.
And it was a little town on top of that, so a strange Virginia State Police car. So, and I guess the ATF doesn't. How do they pick and choose what they investigate fire-wise, or do they have to be called in, or how does that work?
Both. I work with state and locals all the time. So I would go when they had something to look at a fire to see if it was an arson or an accidental fire. And sometimes if it was a house, we don't have jurisdiction federally. I mean, I would look at it because it's a good experience for training me to see more fires, and then the investigators to hear my thoughts from my training. See, eventually, after 37 years, I got 3,000 hours worth of training. That's a lot. But even back then, ATF, we had about 120 hours every single year back then. And the state and local guys were maybe getting 40 hours here and there, that type of thing. So my training and their experience meshed. And we would assist them if it was an arson and push it along. That's why we had the doctor's case and went to state court, and the school teachers went to state court. But because it was, both of them were residential properties, but they were investment properties, but they didn't affect interstate commerce. That's another thing. If we're going to bring it to federal court, it's very simple, interstate commerce. If you go to your favorite restaurant and they serve beef that comes from Kansas City and the restaurant burns, they can no longer buy that beef. So it affects interstate commerce by burning that building. Simple as that, So it's part of the statute for the feds. And, sometimes we take cases to federal court and sometimes we don't. Even a restaurant fire, we might take to local court just because we talk amongst ourselves and with prosecutors, and we work it out, figure out which way is best, So, yeah, I had a couple serial arson cases that are just so strange. And they're both of them in the Bang book. I go by Burn, Bang, and Flames. That's the way I abbreviate my 3 books. But we had one in New Hampshire, and the fires were happening in the middle of the night. Very strange set. Someone was using a blowtorch, sit outside occupied houses and blow a hole through the side of the house and set it on fire. Okay. So that happened around 15 to 20 times by the time ATF got involved. And because they had this serial arsonist running around and they weren't able to catch him after 15 to 20, we got invited to assist. So I was teamed up with one of the state fire marshals up there who were not, they weren't state troopers at the time. And I remember I had a khaki suit on, and I remember what shoes I had on. We're going out to do some interviews, and we're driving up, and we come to this T intersection in a rural area. There's not a lot of roads in and out of town, and the assistant fire chief was coming down the hill rapidly. So we cut across the intersection and pulled up next to him. "What do you got going?" He says, "A fire." And he told us where, and the fire marshal knew about where it was, and we headed in that direction. We could see a column of smoke, and we were the first responders. We were the first ones there, except for a guy who had fire boots on and was outside bent over, coughing up, spitting up smoke or throwing up or whatever. He happened to be the brother of the log cabin that was on fire, the owner of the log cabin. And there were 3 holes blown right through the logs. Where the logs come together, it's a little thinner, and 3 holes burned right there. And, I got a garden hose and started, and the fire marshal went in and ventilated some windows in the house. And fire department came right behind us, and they knocked it down quickly. And we interviewed a kid. He's in his early 20s. We said, "What's up?" He said, "Well, I came over to take a shower." Lance was his name. And he lived in a trailer with no running water and no electricity. He had a kind of a rough upbringing. And he was on the volunteer fire department. That's why he had his fire boots, except he got kicked off the volunteer department because he was afraid to go into burning buildings and to climb a ladder. Kind of two things that might be necessary.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but he took the time to put his fire boots on to allegedly help put this fire out. But in his little crappy station wagon that was parked in the yard, in the back through the glass window, we could see a blowtorch. And we interviewed the heck out of him. We even had the brother sit with him, and he wouldn't confess. And we went to trial, and he got acquitted by a jury of his peers. The fire department even raised funds for his defense. Okay.
What?
Yeah. Well, a jury of his peers. So the assistant fire chief, his father was his brother, and his brother was his father. Did I confuse you?
Yeah.
I meant to. So
was this in West Virginia?
his father had his first son, who was now about 20-ish, when the Canadian maid got pregnant. And so the son became the father, but the father was also the father, but he was like grandfather. And that's what he got for jury of your peers in this small town in northern New Hampshire at the time. But he got acquitted by a jury of his peers. But the fires suddenly stopped when we arrested him too, and never took up again. So yeah. I'm not sure why he never went back to it though, unless we scared him straight. I guess I don't know. He confessed at one point to the polygraph examiner, but the polygraph examiner befriended Lance and went fishing with Lance and stuff like that. And Lance confessed to about 10 of the fires. And that confession got thrown out, although he didn't coerce him. But Lance's IQ was not very high, and they saw that this was a strange way to get a confession, So after that got thrown out, it became a much harder case to prove. But we had another one we call a state trooper friend of mine here in Mass was a fire marshal. And he passed away at age 45 from a heart attack. I spent a lot of time with Mike Shervin was his name. And both of his sons are state troopers now. But Mike called this serial arsonist on the South Shore of Massachusetts. Anything south of Boston is like called the South Shore. And this guy set about 20, 25 fires in about 8 to 12 different towns. And this guy's name was James Dix. And his nickname was the God and Country Serial Arsonist, because he would set churches on fire and he would set American Legion VFWs on fire. Jeez. So, yeah. And, we were on the wrong track for a while. I was doing, in between my two marriages, I was on a break. And I didn't have anything to do on a Saturday night. So one guy that we had as a first suspect, I was sitting on his house alone without letting anybody know in my group, my supervisor or anything. And nothing happened with the suspect. But my side view mirror got torn off my car as I was sitting there. Something hit my car when another car came flying around the corner. And I get out of the car and I found this big chunk of tar, that came from the road. I don't know if it spun from the tires or if these kids threw it at my car, not knowing I'm in the car. So I followed them and got out of the area and then put my blue light on, pulled them over, and they swore they had no knowledge of what was going on, but I identified each one. I had to call my supervisor around midnight on Saturday night, and he had to report it to the special agent in charge. And I was kind of red-faced, but that suspect didn't end up being the guy setting the fires, and we spent a lot of time on him. But James Dix became a suspect when he was stuck in the sand one night on the side of the road. His car got stuck, and a local police officer came upon him and said, I'll call a tow truck for you. You need some help? Yeah, I can't get out of the sand. And he had this little Dodge Aries K car, little crappy piece of car he had. And the officer was getting nervous because James Dix was walking around outside the car in a very unnerving type of manner. And the officer said, do you mind if I look in your car and open your trunk for me? Stuff like that. James opened up the trunk, and there was a can of gasoline in his trunk. Each one of these fires, by the way, was broken rear window and poured in a certain amount of gasoline and just threw a match or something in there. And as a matter of fact, whatever he broke the window with was never left behind. There was no rock, no nothing like that, the broken windows. So it doesn't make you an arsonist when you have a gas can in your car. Mm-hmm. Dick said, oh, my gas gauge doesn't work too well, so I carry it just in case, But the officer noted in his written report that there was an old-fashioned, these are exact words, folks, old-fashioned wooden-handled hammer, the kind that, like your grandfather, maybe your dad had, the kind that might have had the little shims in the top, because the head of the hammer got loose. That type of thing. Well, he noted that. And a few months later, we had a fire on a Friday night of American Legion in one town. And the next night was a middle school. A little bit different target, but it was a middle school. And broken window, poured gasoline. It must have flashed because James dropped his hammer. That's what he was using to break the windows. It was a very frosty night, and the firefighters saw this hammer there. It had no frost on it. They collected it. We got the hammer. I had collected glass from the previous day's fire and glass from the middle school fire, and we sent the hammer to our lab. And in the hammer itself, and I got the vial back afterwards, in the handle, the wooden handle of this old-fashioned wooden-handled hammer were grains of sand virtually. The glass was so small in this when it got returned to me. The lab matched it to the previous day's fire. The glass, they could match it to the batch. They couldn't match it to the exact window, but batch of glass. That's how fine it was. That's great forensics.
That is.
And
what year was that, by the way?
What was that?
What year was that?
Ooh, about 91.
Okay.
Yep, about 91. We started with the investigation like 89. Then when we got Dix as a suspect, he didn't fit profile too well. He's a white male, not between the ages of 18 and 25, like profile often says. He was in his mid-40s. He lived with mom and dad. He did not have a good relationship with any women. As a matter of fact, he had no women in his life. He had no friends. He looked at his high school yearbook. He was kitchen helper only. That was the only thing. But he was a Boston College graduate, which doesn't fit any profile. He got kicked out of the Navy in 1969. During the height of Vietnam, and we couldn't find why. We got the letter that says he's dismissed from military service, but we couldn't find an officer to say who wrote it or something, who dismissed him, So I don't know if he was setting fires. I don't know what he was doing. So living with mom and dad, and there was a fire like 12 miles from his house one night. And we had meetings with the locals, where this whole area, we had meetings. And we said, keep aware of what's going on. So one of the fire chiefs where Jim lived was awake because his ambulance was out on a call in the middle of the night. And this call comes in Foxborough, where the Patriots now play, or if you want to call it play. Maybe it is play and it's not work because they're awful. But there was a fire of a VFW, and the person actually saw a K car. He didn't have his glasses on, so he didn't make a good witness, but he did see a K car that did not have any lights on, and then turned the lights on when it got to the street because the alarm went off when the window was broken. Okay. And the fire chief heard it. So he went and sat across the street from James Dix's house. Jim was not home, got home like an hour later. So I interviewed him that next day. His mother was a tough cookie. Oh, Jim is sleeping. Well, I really need to talk to him. And what do you need to talk to him about? Some fires, stuff like that. Well, he doesn't know anything about any fires, but he's sleeping. I said, but I really need to talk to him right now. And eventually convinced her to get Jim up. Another time I interviewed him in the same house. I went into the living room of a Cape Cod style home on the first floor, and that was his bedroom. And the walls were lined with plywood and foam. And Jim had earphones on, a TV 3 feet in front of him on a TV program, a TV 3 feet to the left of him on the same program, because I come to find out that James was hearing voices. So he's trying to block it all out. His dad told me he was in the backyard screaming at someone. Dad went out there, and there was nobody there. He heard voices. I interviewed Jim 3 times and eventually got to voices, but they never told him to set fires, according to Jim. Okay. And we linked the hammer to him because his father was a floor layer, wooden floors, and his father gave him that hammer. Okay. But the federal court, the prosecutor would only charge him with 1 fire. He got caught by a 75-year-old security guard with his hand in the window, just poured the gasoline, hadn't lit it yet. Jim hopped in his car and took off, but the security guard got his plate, had him arrested in the next town where the fire was from his house. Well, had him brought in anyway. And he was brought in, and I was in a lineup that night with 5 other men, including James Dix, for a canine lineup. The state police had a canine. He told us all to squat down and hold our hands out. And he ran the dog by us. And body language, Jim's hands pulled so tight into his body, I thought he was going to crush his ribs as the dog was coming by. And he did hit on his hands, his pants. At the time, I think he still had shoes on, and I think he hit on his shoes. But, of course, defense attorney would say, yeah, he went to a gas station, and poured his own gas. Sure. But he eventually pled guilty to the 1 fire. The prosecutors wouldn't charge him with the rest of them. We didn't have good information. And he did 3 years or something like that. When he got out, he got in trouble again. He got violent for the first time that I know of. Some kids allegedly broke his window with an apple or something. So he tried to make a kid eat an apple with glass in it. Oh. And so he wasn't taking his meds, which back then we had federal parole, and he wasn't taking his meds for paranoid schizophrenia. So they yanked him back in, eventually got back out, and I have a great picture in the book with a state fire marshal pointing at a window of an office building. He went to his parole officer south of Boston, and he said, "I need to go back to prison." What? I can't send you back.
What?
He said, "I can't make it out here." He said, "What do I have to do? Set this place on fire?" So they actually sent him to a hospital, and he was looked at by a psychiatrist and talked to for a couple of hours and released him. And the early evening hours, he went back and broke the window and poured gas and stood there. First arriving police officer came up. He said, "I did that." About the easiest case you could ever make. And he went back to prison.
I wonder if, since he was hearing the voices and everything, if that was kind of his safe place. He felt like he was safe from others and, saving others by being there.
I wish I could get that deep with him, but he just wouldn't open up.
Yeah.
I was never mean to him, never aggressive. It's not even an interrogation. It was more like an interview. 3 times, and he just wouldn't open up. And it could have been.
Yeah,
So,
I think he felt safe there.
Well, prison definitely was a safe place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Riley, we're talking about serial arsonists tonight. Wow, that's crazy. But
it's sad too. It's sad that he felt he needed to go back.
Yeah, it is. I mean, by then he was in his 50s.
Yeah.
You hate to see lost souls. Just a waste of a life. But
yeah,
he didn't know any way out. So it is a weird thing, and I'll get into a little paranormal thing for you on this.
Please do, please.
So, first of all, how did I end up with my second wife? Well, we met at a singles place. Every Thursday night, there would be 500 singles at this one place. And she lived north of Boston. And this place was just south of Boston. And if you knew anything here, it's like the Mason-Dixon line. People from the north do not come south. And people from the south don't go north. I mean, I don't go to a restaurant north of Boston. Everything's south. And we don't go beaches up there. We go to the beaches down south, that type of thing. But her friends convinced her, she had been divorced for 3-4 years. And her friends convinced her, look, we got to meet somebody. We got to go there. And she's in the parking lot watching a couple men go in, and she's not liking what she sees. And says, I don't want to go in. And he said, come out. We got to meet someone else in there. So the bar in that place is huge. It's a full oval, and I bet you're looking a good 20 to 30 feet across the other side of the bar, and at the long end of the oval, it'd be about 50 or 60 feet. And I was there to meet somebody, a friend of mine. I met him every Thursday because I was like a male whore, and but I was trying to meet somebody, for some permanence. And so I spot her along the other side of the bar, and her friends spot me, and they're single too. And they said, there's a guy over there for you. They said that to my wife. And imagine, they not for themselves, but for her. And we had this eye dialogue going on across the way. And eventually, about a half hour later, I get enough guts to get over there. And we end up talking, and, of course, conversation, what do you do type of thing. And, back then you had a suit on, or a sport jacket or something. And, my badge was always in my pocket. And, I'm not going to show it to the whole bar, but I pull it out, and I'm a federal agent. She goes, oh, yeah, sure you are. I said, she goes like, what's so special about it? I was a special agent, I said, what's so special about special agent? My answer is all depend who you're talking to, So, but, we, from that day on, we've been together, and eventually get married. Now, her father was a captain just outside the city in a small city just north of Boston. And her brother was a captain also, the same department. And Joyce, my wife, lived through a fire in East Boston when my stepson was 5 years old. We have what we call 3-deckers, or is that a sandwich? Firefighter said a 3-decker's a sandwich. Call them a 3-family, or that type of thing. So there were 4 of them burned down one night, right in a row, because they're only separated by a wall or a sidewalk. And East Boston's where Logan Airport is. It's right on the ocean. You get a breeze almost all the time. And the 4 of them just burned down before the fire department could knock it down. And she was in the second one. So she lives through this fire in the nighttime, coming down the stairs in the dark. And her family is fire department. And she ends up with a fire investigator. Okay. Now, it's not common knowledge all over the world, and then I'll give up something, but her brother was a paranoid schizophrenic. And when he's on his meds and stuff, he was about as normal as the 3 of us here, whatever that might mean.
Right.
Yeah. So we eventually spoke to the fire chief there, a good friend of mine and a friend of my wife's too, and got him off the department when he was about ready. He could have retired anyway. He reached retirement age, but we got him off before he could cause somebody to get hurt, killed, or embarrass the department or something. But so her brother got very ill. Her dad died of leukemia, fire-related, and her brother got leukemia and other cancer. He had growth come right out of his jaw, and along with the poor mental state that he was in. And so her mother died first, but dad died first, then her mother, and Joyce took care of her in a assisted living and then nursing home. And just before her mother died, the day she died, an accordion player came down the hallway of the nursing home, and he poked his head in the door, and he was going to turn around and leave because Joyce's mom was mostly out of it. And Joyce said, no, my mom loves accordion music. As a matter of fact, she had bought one, and it was in the house when we cleaned the house out, and she never learned how to play. But no. So he played, like Amazing Grace and a couple other things on his accordion. And her mother could hear it. And then she passed away an hour or 2 later. And Joyce doesn't believe in a lot of things in particular. But, when her brother died, a couple years later, she said, Mom, give me some sign that Curtis is okay. And Joyce went to a supermarket where she very, very rarely goes. But on occasion, she does. And in the parking lot was an accordion player. Just, panning for money or whatever. But he was playing music. Right after she said, Mom, give me a sign that Curtis is okay. And then we went to Keene, New Hampshire. Now, Keene isn't like the locale where a lot of people go on vacation, but we went for 3 days and stayed right on this beautiful little main street that they have, separated by a big island of grass, 2 sides of the road, and it has a lot of little shops around and stuff like that. And Joyce didn't tell me ahead of time or anything, but again, she was just thinking of her mom and stuff like that. And she had been thinking about, I hope you're doing okay. Maybe some kind of sign or something. Right in front of our hotel on Main Street in Keene, New Hampshire, was an accordion player. Playing the accordion. It's just like, how many times have you seen an accordion player on the side of the road?
Right.
you know?
Never.
I don't think I ever have.
See?
Never.
But like 3 times it came back, just when she was thinking about it, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like the weirdest thing, and a connection, and she really believes that they're doing okay, you know?
Yeah.
So
That's so cool.
What do you think, Amanda? Is that paranormal?
It's a sign for sure. Yeah.
yeah,
It's definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Something from the other side, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Definitely. That's so cool.
yep. So
Yeah, that just goes back to something I always think about. We're never alone. You know, we're never alone. And lighten it up a little bit here. Chris said your badge probably works better than my female body inspector shirt.
it was
Chris.
it was a beautiful badge, and a nice case, that type of thing. But
it was back in the day where you earned it.
Yeah.
Well, before you were arson, you were a regular ATF guy, and not the kind of alcohol, tobacco, and firearms I like. You were a cop. You were a Fed before the arson part, right?
Yeah, I got on a job in '76, and the first 4 years I did gun cases. On the night that Elvis died, I know exactly what bar I was in trying to buy guns. It's one of those things you just remember. And even that 46 machine gun case I had. So it relates back to the undercover I was doing when Elvis died. I ended up buying a couple of guns within a week or so of his death, and it was in this one part of Boston. So when the machine gun case came up, probably a year or two later, a couple of the guns that I bought were legally owned by the owner of a major liquor store in the Hyde Park section of Boston. And back then, you returned guns back to the legal owner, even so they were stolen from him, and we returned guns back. And I did back in probably Elvis died in '77, right? I think so. But within 6 months after the case got adjudicated or something, I returned the guns back to the owner of the liquor store. And he said to me, if you ever want anything or something, just come on into the store. I never stepped in the store again until the machine gun case. And the reason is that Charlie Gallant, the owner of the house where the machine guns were, Charlie disappeared. He had a small fire in his house in the garage. You know what a raised ranch looks like? A garage underneath type of thing. A woman knocks on his door like at 7:30 in the morning and said, there's smoke coming out of your garage. And Charlie said to her, yeah, I've taken care of it. Like she understood that to be like I called the fire department or something. But he didn't. As soon as she left, he jumped in his car and he took off. And when the fire department got there and they forced entry into the garage area and started knocking down the smoke and stuff like that, they uncovered the first trash barrel with 17 guns in it. And then from there, it just ended up with 46 M16s. So Charlie came from the Hyde Park area of Boston, and he was a big drinker from interviewing and learning more about Charlie along the way. So I just, based on a hunch, went to that liquor store and showed the owner of the liquor store, hey, how you doing? Haven't seen you. And I showed him a picture of Charlie. And, he said, no, I can't say I've ever seen the guy. Here's my card. Give me a call if something comes up. I'm not kidding you. 2 days later, Friday night, Charlie went into that liquor store. Now, we've been looking for him for about 3 weeks at that time. And he went into that liquor store. And the guy recognized him right away from the picture. The guy followed him outside, got the license tag off the car, which was a Maryland tag of a car that was stolen in another part of Boston, a Maryland tag. And he tried to call our office, but back then we had an agent sit on the phones until, I can't remember, 11 o'clock, midnight, something. But he tried calling, and it got to DC, and DC never got to me.
Shocker.
I found out Monday morning. The owner, when he went home that night, Charlie's car was parked about 100 yards down on his very main street in the Hyde Park section of Boston. And we could have nabbed him right then and there. But what the heck of a hunch. And it almost paid off. And, you know.
If DC just hadn't got in your way.
Yeah. You know. They really fell down on the job that night, let me tell you. That's before we had pagers, and of course before we had cell phones, because this is 1980, you know. And they probably had a hard time locating me anyway. I don't know. Let's see. No, I was married the first time then, so I would have been home.
Yeah, you're right. That was before all that stuff now where they can find you in a second. So.
Yeah. So Charlie eventually got another 3 or 4 weeks went by, and he got pulled over drunken driving by a young patrol officer in Groton, Connecticut. And Charlie didn't even have a gun with him after having 46 plus 17 guns in his house. Didn't even have a gun with him. And he was drunk. And he had no identification. And wouldn't tell him who he was for a couple of days. He actually said to him, if you knew who you had, you'd call the FBI. Well, ATF got no respect, you know. But, you know, so, yeah, Charlie, I ran down to Connecticut when we found out. Eventually, like when he sobered up and stuff, they found out who he was. And I raced down there, and Charlie begged me to stay with him in prison that night because he figured there was a hit out on him for losing those 46 M16s. I said, Charlie, you tell me who you're afraid of or who you're holding them for, because it was 4 years after they were stolen from the Armory. Who you're holding them for? Tell me a story. Who stole them? How you got them? He wouldn't tell me anything. Charlie was one of those old-time crooks. Charlie would walk into your house with a suitcase, and he'd have on his nice bandlawn shirt and, you know, double knit pants type of thing. And he'd break into your house, and he would steal Hummels and guns and anything else, that type of thing that he could put in his suitcase. And that's why he had $1 million worth of stolen goods in his house. I guess he couldn't fence them too well, because what are you doing with $1 million worth sitting in your house, you know? But that's how Charlie worked. And I said, I can't protect you if you don't tell me. And he didn't tell me. So Charlie sent his common law wife out. Wasn't married to her, but they've been together. So it's a common law wife. And she found out that there was no hit on him. Thank you very much. And, Charlie did 8 years, but Charlie said to me, he said, this is what I do. He said, I'm a thief, and this is what I'm always going to do. He says, you have your job, I have my job. He didn't hate me. He didn't spit at me. He wouldn't have tried to shoot me. Like today, everybody shoots somebody. And 10 years later, I'm on the courthouse steps in Norfolk County at Superior Court with these glorious 40-foot high granite columns, you know. And I said, I know you. He goes, I know you. He said, I told you I'd never change. He was there for another burglary thing. You know?
Oh my gosh.
So.
And how old was he then?
Charlie was about 48 years old then. Yep.
Right, Chris? Chris says Charlie was a thief and a hoarder.
Yeah, in order.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, I had to push one of the bedroom doors open. I don't know how he got it closed. I had to use my shoulder to push it open. There was so much stuff in that one bedroom. But so that's a fun case. And
He must have gone out a window.
Here's another fun thing. So I got an intern with me, assigned to me, and he got caught in Groton, Connecticut, and he had a key with him. He had a couple maps. He had one of Baltimore area and things circled, and he had a couple other Connecticut ones. He had a key, like a room key, but it didn't have a tag like Marriott or Holiday Inn. It had one of those numbers that you could press, the plastic, and stick it on, like room number 5,
Mm-hmm.
So first day we're hitting motels and stuff like that. And then second day, I said, this could be like a boarding house or something. So we looked up some boarding houses and got some information from the locals. And it was like the second place we hit that morning, where my friend Ron, I met this guy, Ron. It was his father who owned the property, and Ron stayed in one of the units. And that's our key. Yeah, we went to this room a week at a time to this guy. And I'd like to get in that room. You need a warrant. We applied for a warrant from a federal judge. There's a guy who had 60 some odd guns, $1 million worth of stolen goods. In his car, he didn't have a gun. You might think there might be a gun in this apartment. You might think that there is something that's going to tell us about his crimes, something, that type of thing. A judge says, you don't have probable cause to get in the apartment. And he wouldn't sign it. So Ron went in to start cleaning it out, and there were no guns in there and stuff. But Ron did me that favor of looking. But Ron and his girlfriend, and then wife, she became his wife. It's so funny that we became friends for years after that case. It's just you just meet different people and hook up with them in certain ways, and it's pretty neat,
Yep, absolutely. I used to be a police officer's best friend. When as a paramedic, if I'm there, I'm looking for something. I'm looking for medicine. I'm opening cabinets, pulling drawers out, accidentally dumping stuff on the floor. Police loved me. I'm surprised I never got called.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember one case, we were looking for meds, and I left all the cabinets open, the refrigerator open.
Oh my gosh, Glenn.
Police officer said, "Man, we love you." He said, we can see it. I put out a fire in an apartment, and this guy had all these collections of sneakers. And I looked over, and something was smoldering, and opened up, and there was like 5 kilos of coke. I left that out. I put the fire out on top and called the fire marshal. Said, "Hey, you might want to bring some of your cop buddies." And so I opened some more drawers to make sure, there was no more fire. I don't know what kind of drugs it was down below, but it was some bad stuff. So
Oh my gosh.
couldn't have got it without. I think it was like something plastic had melted on the dresser, and it just caught like what do they call them? Little paper cloth thing that they put on the dressers. Caught that on fire, and it hadn't time to flash, so I just hit it real quick, and of course opened the door to make sure it hadn't burned down. And then, you got to keep investigating. So
I've taught a lot of fire investigation over time, and I have a class now that I do on occasion, and I'll take you through. I took a photograph of every appliance in my house that could catch fire. And I go through and tell people how a refrigerator catches on fire. There's a couple good ways. Your microwave can catch on fire any day it wants to because it's energized. If it has a fault behind the panel, your power panel, it's always energized. When I go away for a couple of days, I unplug my microwave. Power strips, you use and abuse power strips. I only have 2 in the house now, and they're both metal power strips, not the Buck 97 plastic ones, because even if the middle one, which is built a little better, has a failure, there's no extra fuel to get going. The plastic really serves as a nice fuel. I scare people to death about their dryer, about their bathroom fans, that type of thing. And here's a fun one that I did. I have had 2 fires, one absolutely confirmed. A 16-year-old kid puts his contact lenses on every day. He got them in April. It's now November. He puts them on at the kitchen table, at an old wooden table owned by grandma. It was solid oak. And he uses the woman's makeup mirror. And mom and dad and he leave the same time together every day. They're teachers at his school. They all come home together, and there's smoke in the house, but no fire. The mirror, had taken the sun, which I was there about the same time of day in November, coming right through the kitchen window, right next to the table, focused on the little wicker napkin holder on the table, got the napkins and the wicker going, and it put a hole right through the oak and landed on the floor and started burning right there, but then put itself out. And now, how long does the sun, if you ever played with a magnifying glass, you have to focus it. How long does the sun stay focused on the mirror to cause that to catch on fire? I went home and used my daughter's makeup mirror and went to the window, that same week, same day, and it took 27 seconds to ignite a napkin.
Really?
Yep. Through a window,
That is fast.
in the mirror, focused.
I would have
20
never
seconds.
thought that fast.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Wayne, I got to let you go because we're running into our second hour here. I didn't mean to keep you 2 hours, but gosh, it went by so quick.
Fantastic.
We're gonna have to have you back. Because,
Yeah.
I'm running out of stories. Come on.
Oh well. Okay. So, well, when you get with those Hollywood elites, so you'll forget all about us little people. But yeah, we do need to have you back. You're great. You got lots of stories, and we love having you on. So yeah, please come back anytime, and I'll put in the comments of the show where they can find your stuff. And for people listening on the radio, where would they need to go?
burnbostonburn.com if you want. I have a nice website. I will, if you buy a book there, you can buy any of the 3 books there. And I will sign the book, and I get it in next day's mail. I got 4 going out tomorrow, next day's mail. And or you can go to Amazon if you want, but you're not going to get color pictures for my first 2 books, which I have a lot of color pictures. But you can go to Amazon, that giant retailer.
the online Kmart. Wayne, thank you so much. And
Yes.
It was a pleasure.
It was. We'll have to have you back. Man, have a nice evening. Thanks for spending the time with us.
It's time for me to go to bed. It's 11 o'clock.
All right.
Yeah, it's getting close for us too.
I got golf with a 95-year-old dad tomorrow. So
Oh,
You need a nap. So,
Yeah.
so
all right, Wayne, go get you some rest. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. And I'll
Thank
send you some
you.
email about some stuff here soon.
very good. You guys take care of yourselves. I appreciate it.
You
Stay
too.
stay safe.
Thanks,
You
Wayne.
too,
We'll see
Wayne.
you
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh.
Great.
I didn't mean to push you out there. Hit the wrong button.
I'm just
Hit
going to
on-
go away with Wayne.
There you go. Man, he's got some great stories.
He's fantastic. Wow. And I
That's
can't get
cool.
over 27 seconds is all it took for that.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, you just think about the sun coming in through a window. It's crazy. 27 seconds.
These fire marshals are amazing. I saw one solve a forest fire. It started with a Coke bottle that was broken, that the sun hit it and started it, and the wind burned
Oh my
straight out. And
gosh.
yeah.
That's
Um,
crazy.
I've seen arson investigators show how a water bottle can set the inside of your car on fire.
Yes. Yeah.
So
It's just crazy how quickly that happens.
yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
me want to go check all my windows and make sure there's nothing in my windows.
You're gonna be emailing Wayne asking him for tips on
Yeah.
stuff to live out in the woods.
Yeah, I'll definitely be unplugging my microwave when I go away now.
Yeah. My daughter
Jeez.
thinks I'm nuts. I unplug the toaster in the microwave.
Oh, yeah, I keep my toaster put away. I don't even leave it plugged out and plugged in at all.
I was visiting my mom in Knoxville, and she sets the toaster oven on fire right in front of me. And it's probably been there since 1972. The little cloth things underneath the cabinet, and flames are going up. And I'm already picturing it's going to hit the cabinets, the ceiling, then back down. And mom's over there panicking. I just walk over and I just close the door, unplug it, and throw it in the stove. And she's like, "Well, I never thought of that." And I'm like, "She ain't gonna burn in there. Well, if it is, it ain't gonna burn for long." So
Right? And if it does, it's not going to hurt anything.
absolutely. And she's still using that same damn toaster oven. God, I wish I could throw that thing in the back
Of
door.
course she is.
Maybe I'll do that in my next trip up there. Amanda, thank you for hanging out with us.
Yeah.
That's great. I know we've ran over a little bit here tonight, but Wayne was great. I appreciate the stories.
Yeah.
And
We always have a good time.
we got to get his books. So
Oh yeah, I've already got the website pulled up.
this show will cost you a fortune. I have determined that already. You're never going to make money. Not going to happen.
I need more bookshelves too.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a stack right here on top of this. That's just that I need to read from the shows, I think, this year. So
Oh my gosh.
on a shelf over there, probably from last year, about 10. So I love it. So let's see. So who do we got next week? Let me look this up here real quick before we go. We have the Misfits coming up this weekend. Miss Cheyenne, thank you, Chris, is getting that set up. And so I'm not sure who or what, but she will be back. And then we have your show, if everybody's feeling well.
Yes.
We'll get that going back again. You go ahead and tell the story while I look up why there was no show for our fans that were looking for it.
We were very worried that Shay had pneumonia. They wanted to do a chest x-ray and everything, and she's okay. They gave her an antibiotic. She's getting better, and we will be back Monday night at 8 p.m. with Two Broke Witches.
Awesome. And I look next week, and we've got a author that is, well, he's a children's author, and it's all about Bigfoot stuff. He does Bigfoot comic books, Bigfoot kids things. So he's got some cool stuff going on. And who is the 10 o'clock guest? I don't see a 10 o'clock guest, but I know I booked one. So we're gonna do some homework.
We're just gonna have him for the 2 hours next week.
I promised somebody the 10 o'clock, and I don't remember who I promised it to. Oh, good Lord.
We'll see who shows up.
I'm losing my mind. It's a slow process, so I swear. Well, I guess we will just see everybody for the Misfits Saturday, and then see you next Monday.
Yes.
Maybe by Wednesday I'll figure out who another guest is. Seat of my pants, people. Seat of my pants.
That's how we fly.
That's it. I'm not going to make any money, but I'm going to have a hell of a lot of fun. Everybody have a great night, and we will see you soon.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.